Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out to tonight's presentation on the fire station project that's going to be coming up at this weekend's election, and then also voted on at town meeting. My name is Scott Duffy. I'm the fire chief. Along with me tonight's Gene Blaney. Gene's a town resident, director of the Rockland Recreation. I have Lieutenant Charles Williams with the fire department. We are three of the members on the fire station building committee. We have a few other committee members that weren't able to make it tonight, so hopefully we'll get to introduce them at some point as well. Also that's going to speak tonight is Town Administrator Doug Lapp. Doug's going to go over the financials of what the votes mean, yes, no, what happens with taxes related to the fire station. So I appreciate you all being here, helping to, as it says, build the future of public safety for Rockland. 2 years ago, we came before the town for a new fire station, and that was voted down. It was voted down at the elections and also at town meeting. So why are we back? Well, the number one thing is that we were listening, and we listened to what the townspeople were telling us at town meeting. Nobody said we didn't need a new fire station. The problems exist. We presented it very well. But the big concerns is that we came with a fire station that was too big for the town of Rockland, is what many felt. And it was too expensive. We couldn't afford it. So we looked at that and we worked on that since. So for 2 years we've been working on some solutions to the problems to accommodate a project that would hopefully fit within the town and still work for the needs and the operations of the Rockland Fire Department. One of the other concerns was, well, what can we do with the current fire station? So we also delved into that a little bit deeper. But one thing, no matter what, no matter how this vote goes or what happens at the elections or a town meeting, is that the challenges at the fire station have not gone away, and they're going to remain. And it'll be also my commitment will still remain to push forward with a new fire station. So, kind of why we're here. Just a real brief history of the station in the location that's up at 360 Union Street. On our far left, this is the fire station from the 1800s, which was then replaced in 1939 with this fire station, which was built as a WPA project with federal grant funds. And then the addition, the other three bays, were placed on in 1978. So that addition as well was paid for with federal grant money. And as you can see along with that, you can see the size of the fire trucks, the fire apparatus. Relatively small, back at the turn of the century and into the 20s. We're getting here probably into the 50s. And then here, currently this is the size of our fire apparatus. One thing to note is here, on this one, if you're a pedestrian on Union Street trying to walk down, you got to walk out into traffic to get by the trucks. It's not often that we have the trucks out, but if we're doing some repairs or some training, they might be out there. So that is a concern. We've just outgrown the lot that's on Union Street, and we'll get into that in a little bit. As I said, the 1978 and the 1939 sections of the current fire station on Union Street. This is the picture. I think pictures say 1,000 words. This is, if you're looking, this is the closest side to the library of the current fire station. This picture's from the 1940s, and this picture was just taken back probably over the summer. I'm trying to remember when I had taken that. Tried to get the same perspective from the same location, and you can just see how just the ambulances alone, which are some of our smaller vehicles now, just outsize the fire trucks for which that station was built. So keeping that in mind, apparatus is not getting any smaller, and it just seems to be getting bigger. One thing that, that I will say is that our mission, over the years, back in the 40s, all the way up to the 70s, and even prior to the 40s, the fire department was just that. It was just a fire department. We were called to put out fires, maybe rescue, people at the, some minor rescues. Today, the fire department is more of an all hazards department. Majority of what we do is medical. We respond to all medicals in town. We get called to put out fires. We take care of hazmat situations and technical rescue situations. We go to motor vehicle accidents where we may have to extricate patients from a vehicle. So as our missions grow, our apparatus has grown. We don't have the luxury of 20, 30 people on duty at a time, so we can't divide up our personnel per apparatus like the big cities do. The big city, an engine has one responsibility, a ladder truck has another responsibility, you have a heavy rescue that might do another, and you may even have a hazmat unit that does another. We kind of have to do it all, so we have to take all that equipment and put it onto one or two vehicles that we can utilize and easily respond with our current personnel. And so that's why our trucks are getting bigger as our mission grows. At this point, I'm going to turn this over to Lieutenant Charlie Williams, and he's going to explain, just why we need a new station. Do you want to hold that?
Perfect. Thank you, Chief. As the Chief said, my name is Charlie Williams. I have been on the Fire Station Building Committee since the inception. It's been quite a while now. I'm also a Rockland resident. Born and raised here. My parents own businesses here. I chose to raise my family here. I believe wholeheartedly in this community. It's an amazing community, and I believe in this project. The residents came to us and said, like the Chief said, hey, we need you to scale this down, and that's what we did. But I want to talk about a little bit about where we're at. And I know it's easy to say, oh, it's just too small. We don't fit there anymore. But that is the case. It is too small. Like the Chief was saying, our apparatus has gotten so much bigger. Back in the 40s, in the 50s, a fire truck may have been 8 foot wide. Now they're 12 feet wide. Or 10 feet wide. It may have been 8 feet high or 6 feet high. Now they're 9 and 10 and 12 feet high. So the apparatus has gotten exponentially bigger. And that's because, like the Chief was saying, we're responding to more incidents, right? When I started my career here, back in the 80s and then into the 90s, if you had told me that I would be carrying ballistic protection, the same ballistic protection that SWAT teams and our military is using to protect themselves on a piece of fire apparatus, I would have said, no, you're crazy. We're never going to live in that time. Well, that time is here, and we're doing that now. And between carrying all of our turnout gear and all of our structural firefighting gear, our non-structural firefighting gear, our ballistic gear, the apparatus has to be able to accommodate that. And currently in that station, we just can't do it with the size of the apparatus and the amount of apparatus that we have, like the Chief was saying, to move forward. And that's why we can't fit these larger vehicles in there. I'm going to switch between slides so I can just kind of give you an idea. Oh, sorry. My bad. I know. I wasn't going to walk. All right. So I just want to, laser pointer. It's not going to show on the screen. So this first picture up here shows just about the distance between the front apparatus bays and the front of the apparatus. And that's only a foot, maybe a foot and a half to try to squeeze through there. And you can imagine that when an emergency situation happens and the alarm goes off, guys are scrambling to get their turnout gear on, they're scrambling to get to apparatus. They've got to move around this area. It's tight, it's tough to do. It can be frustrating. You can also see it the same up in this picture with the ambulance. You can see that our locker's right there in between the ambulance. So they're trying to squeeze through there. Sometimes they're going through there like this to get into apparatus. One of the other things that has changed and become more prevalent is technology. When we had this fire station, we didn't have computers. We didn't have any of that stuff. Now we have computers, an IT section. We've had to transform closets that used to hold equipment and clothing into IT closets to hold servers and hard drives and equipment that we need for the technology that makes that station run. Up in the left corner there is our basement. I know it's a dark picture, but that basement is filled to the brim. Not only do we have our regular equipment down there, but we also have equipment that we got during the pandemic when we had to really stock up on lots and lots of equipment, and we still have a lot of that equipment. Up here in the lower left is our training area. Now, this picture really doesn't show it, but that is our training area. But not only is that our training area, that's our living quarters, that's our dining room, that's our kitchen area. All of that is combined into one spot. And it makes it pretty tight in there when we have trainings going on, guys trying to study, guys trying to cook dinners. So it's pretty tight. Speaking of tight, you'll see these bunk rooms. So the bunk rooms, when those stations were built, those bunk rooms, they may have held 3 guys, 4 guys. Now there's 8, 9, 10, 12 beds in those bunk rooms on either side to accommodate the guys and girls that are working there now. And the question always comes up, well, why are there beds? Why do we need to have beds? I can tell you from working there that there's not a lot of sleeping going on in those beds. A lot of times it's just resting between calls because we're so busy and we're up and down all night long. We work 24-hour shifts, and that we don't see those beds very often. You can see that we've had to use one of the restrooms to hold storage, files and records in there. And then I want to point out this last picture. This last picture is basically another dining table. This is on the first floor of the station. This is right behind all of the apparatus. This is where we spend most of our day waiting for calls. So we're sitting at that table, we're eating, we're talking, we're preparing for the day after we've checked out our equipment, and we're sitting there waiting for calls. Well, right on the other side of that is the apparatus. And the apparatus is starting up, it's leaving, it's going. Now we have diesel capture systems that try to capture the diesel exhaust, but as good as they work, they don't capture all 100% of it. And you can walk in that station and many times and you can run your hand on a table and you'll come off with diesel dust. The benefit of a new station is that we won't have that because we're going to be able to separate those areas, and you'll see that as we kind of move forward with the show. Sure.
Before you I just want to add, let me steal the mic for a second. I just want to add a couple things while these pictures are up and interrupt the lieutenant for a second. So this training area, as well as this back table, while it's the firefighters' dining areas, the places where the firefighters are in between calls, those also double as a meeting area for the deputy and myself. Often we have engineers come in, or we have fire alarm companies or sprinkler companies come in, or builders coming in to go over plans with us. We do not have a conference room. We don't have a meeting area. So this is the highly professional meeting room for the Rockland Fire Department. And it's quite embarrassing when you have professionals coming into your building to discuss projects within town and have to have them and try to accommodate them in those conditions. We try to bring it upstairs to the training area where it's a little bit more professional, it's a little bit more clean. However, our building does not meet ADA requirements, so we don't have an elevator. So anybody coming in with any handicap might not be able to go up to the second floor or to the deputy's office or to my office, which again are not that large. They're smaller. We don't have the areas to hold a meeting. So thank you, Lieutenant.
Some of you may recognize these chairs if you had a 1974 Econoline van. That's those chairs came from, but we still love them, we still use them. One of the other things I wanted to talk about was turnout gear and structural firefighting gear. Right now, our structural firefighting gear is put in lockers that are right next to the engines. And that structural firefighting gear is exposed to the diesel exhaust when we leave. In addition to that, that firefighting gear is exposed to chemicals and carcinogens when we are actually working at fires. The chief and the town has been great about getting us washers to extract the chemicals after we go to a fire to clean our gear, but that's only part of the solution. The gear, once it's washed, has to be hung, and the gear is hung right on the apparatus bay, right in the areas, same areas that we're eating and drinking. So that stuff is being hung there and dried there, and again, continues to off-gas. The other thing is that that gear is exposed to UV light. The worst thing you can do, one of the worst things you can do for firefighting gear is expose it to UV light because it causes it to break down a lot quicker and degrade, which makes us have to replace that a lot sooner. The new station, we've accommodated all of that, and we'll kind of show that as we move forward. Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jean Blaney. As Scott told you, I'm the recreation director in town. I live over at 118 Turner Road. So if you're ever by Home Depot, that's where I live. So I've been on the station committee for 7 or 8 years. I can't really remember, to be truthful. I kind of go back to COVID and then just count. So we've been at this for a while, as these guys have mentioned to you. And I thought I could read all of this, but I can't. So I'm going to step over here. As you can see, you guys have probably seen these slides before if you've seen our presentation. But as the chief had mentioned, we looked at 3 different locations, and we took a deep dive into trying to renovate the existing station. So green is good. Yellow is like, and then red is a no-go. So as you can see, the first column is Church Street. Has a lot more green on it, a little bit of yellow, but mostly green. Then the medium edition, which would be actually taking the 2 existing properties behind the station by eminent domain, and then would provide them with parking and then maybe 1 additional bay. Has a little bit of red on it. Doesn't still accommodate what we were looking for. And then lastly, there was a really big push to just renovate the existing station. It still doesn't satisfy all of the needs of the fire station. So that leads me to my next slide. There we go. So are we throwing good money after bad? So when we're renovating the Union Street station, as I mentioned, you know, will it be a renovation? Yes. Will it satisfy everything? No. It won't satisfy what Charlie's talking about. The emissions and the diesel gas. It really doesn't give them a ton more space. This picture actually doesn't even give them 1 more bay. So as you can see, the total project cost, which everybody is really concerned about, is about $14 million. Is there anything else I had on that one?
No, just on that is, you know, really the renovations would kind of rearrange the upstairs, the 2nd floor of the fire station. Might make for a better living condition for the firefighters as far as a little bit more space, rearrange some of the bunking areas, but it doesn't solve our problem with apparatus parking and be able to get the larger trucks into the buildings or being able to store them as efficiently as we could in a new station. It doesn't give us any answers to parking, our current parking conditions. And yeah, that's so the renovation doesn't really solve much of an issue at all.
I just wanted to add on this. We do a lot of training, and training is something that, you know, we can't do currently at that station. It's hard to do. We can do training inside and do training in the classroom, but one of the things we can't do is a lot of the hands-on training, which leads us to go to other parts of the community to do that training. And sometimes that may take us way out of our response district to another end of town, and then if we get a call up and you know, we're down at the landfill doing some training and we get a call up on Pond Street, it's quite a response time. One of the things that the new station will allow us is we have built in a lot of training props to the exterior of that building to allow us to do a lot of hands-on, on-site training.
Yeah, and I can mention that quite a few times Scott has called me and asked to come to the community center and use our community room, which is our largest room that we have. And he stuffs a lot of people in there all at once, and they do their training pretty much all day long. You know, so what does that leave for the community center? That means that their trucks are outside. They're all crammed in there, and there's people from other stations that come to these trainings as well. So it's really not conducive for Scott to come over and do his training even at the community center. So our next slide is, sorry. So this is, again, Union Street. As you can see, this one would be taking the 2 houses that I mentioned by eminent domain behind the fire station, which honestly nobody really wants to do. It gives them a little bit more room. It gives them one more bay for their apparatus. So it gives them a little bit more room downstairs, a little bit more room upstairs, but they're still crammed in there. So, and as everybody mentioned, the fire station's growing, our town is growing, therefore their apparatus is going to be growing as well. Did you want to say something on that?
Just on both of these, any renovations that are made to the current Union Street station at 360 is going to create a displacement of our operations and services. So we're going to have to move the fire department to a temporary location while the renovations are being done, or while an addition is being put on, if we had gone with these options. That was at a cost of $1.17 million for temporary housing of the apparatus, and then having the firefighters to live and work out of essentially construction trailers at a temporary site, maybe up to 18 months while the work is being done. And you know, that was just something that we didn't even want to think about putting our personnel through. On top in addition to this, the addition, if we were to do an addition on the fire station and we were to take the properties at the rear of the fire station, number one, it's an eminent domain. We really don't want to displace town residents. But the other is another additional cost to purchase those properties that would be added on to the station.
And I think what I neglected to say, that even though it gives some parking in the back, it doesn't give all of the parking that actually the station needs to accommodate all of the firefighters' trucks and vehicles. So these guys will still have to be dropped off. Did you want to do this one? Do you want me to?
No, do it.
Okay.
Oh, a Charlie thing?
Charlie, is it a Charlie thing?
I just wanted to go back to the
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to go back to the other slides, because one of the messages that we heard was, well, why can't you stay on Union Street? It's the heart of the city, the heart of the town. We want you to stay there. We wanted to stay there, and we looked at it. We looked hard at it. We said, can we actually fit on this lot? And it was a resounding no. No matter how many times we looked at it and how many scenarios we ran, it doesn't work, unfortunately. And that's why we had to choose a different site. And that's why we went with the Church Street site.
So this next slide shows you a comparison to where we started last year at the Church Street station, and then our revised one. And I think it's pretty clear. This is the one that we had talked about last year, and this is our design this year. So we've reduced the square footage. We've actually reduced the cost, but that does come with reducing some of the different things that we had going on in that station that we thought would help accommodate a good portion of the community. So the first one, we were thinking not just fire station community, but the second one would be just fire station. Now, I will say that the second one that we looked at, one of the things, or something that I mentioned, is I think that we need to be able to build onto it. So Scott went back to the architects and we talked to them about that. So this This new building on Church Street is something that we can actually add on to should we need to, which was very important to me. Do you have anything you want to say? Okay. I think my slides are done. Oop, did I just miss one? Okay. I'm going to hand it back over to Scott.
Thank you. One of the things with firefighting in general is we are prone to cancers. Firefighters, the profession of firefighting has just been placed on the list of known carcinogens. So, yes, we knew what we were getting into when we chose this profession, but we didn't choose it to get cancer. Firefighters are 30% to 300% more likely to come down with certain cancers than the regular public. So there have been many studies, Boston being one of the leading fire departments in the nation, to do studies on cancers. And the big point of one of their studies is the fire stations. Fire stations can be designed and modeled in order to protect the firefighters. And this is the proposed new Church Street site. And what you can see here is the pinks and reds are where the apparatus, the fire apparatus, the dirty equipment, I say dirty equipment, but it's after it's been cleaned, it's still considered dirty, but where the firefighting equipment would be stored is in the pinks and in the reds. And in between those pinks and reds, there would be little sally ports or transition points with ventilation to keep the carcinogens and the dirt out of the living and working areas. The blue areas are the living and working areas for the firefighters and the personnel working at the station. The executive assistant. If you came into our station right now, our executive assistant, who's here with us tonight, her office is right behind one of the fire engines. So every time we come back with dirty gear or the trucks go in and out in the diesel, that's a person. Now, Christine didn't sign up to be a firefighter. There shouldn't be any risks to somebody that is the executive assistant of the fire department, yet the current building is creating that non-healthy environment where she is. So this new station's taken all that into consideration. Keeping the dirt where the dirt and the bad air needs to be, with separate ventilation systems, improved ventilation systems, and then the living, working, eating spaces in the blue is completely separated. I will point out that down here, this would be, if we were on Howard Street, this would be Howard Street. Church Street would go up this way. This is the first floor, this is the second floor. Right here, we do plan to have a public meeting spot, training room that the public can utilize. We want this station to be for the townspeople, the townspeople to be able to use it. We're going to be in a residential neighborhood. We want to be good neighbors, and I think we have some pictures that show how close we'll be. But we want to be good neighbors. We want to be kind of an anchor for that Church Street, Howard Street area. Just some renderings, just some thoughts that the architects had put together for us. Nothing is final. These are just some thoughts they had. Maintaining a brick facade to match the other buildings in town, the new Phelps Elementary School being one of them. It looks like a Rockland town building, and it maintains that. It looks like something that would belong in Rockland, even though it's in a residential neighborhood. It's not like a fancy glass building that you may expect to see in Cambridge or in downtown Boston. And then just a bird's eye view of what the station would look like on that site. It's a very plain picture. It's very boxy, very not really finished, but one of the things that you would see would be a fence, a barrier fence wall that would separate the fire station property from those on Franklin Ave to give those residents the privacy that they deserve. plantings around, plantings in front of the station, the memorial, the flagpole. None of that is on this, but it just gives you a good idea on how the station would sit and the size of it on that property. As Gene said, we'd ask the architects to consider, allowing for room for expansion if we would need to add on in the future. And we have plenty of room going towards the back of that parking lot to do that. And they even designed the corridors within the building to be able to accommodate an expansion fairly easily. So one thing, the cost. I'm going to invite Town Administrator Doug Lapp up to do some of the financial things, discussions on this. The cost here is $26 million. We're requesting $26.1 million. A lot of that is part of the contingency fees, which Doug can explain much better than I can. But I will say, from 2 years ago to now, we've reduced the size of the building by 22%, and the cost is just about that same amount, almost a quarter of what that original building was. Doug?
Thank you, Chief. So I think the costs are pretty clear. I'm happy to answer questions if we get to the end if you want more detail about the breakout, but it's pretty standard. The largest piece is obviously for construction, which is considered the hard, quote unquote, hard costs, and then design, project management, testing, contingency, other things are considered soft costs. But it is a significant reduction in cost from what was rejected by voters last spring. I know this is the one thing that is most frequently asked, what's it going to cost for the average taxpayer? So what we're showing here is based on the average valued home in town. So the current average assessed value is $517,355. So I want to be clear, that value won't match exactly Zillow if you go online tonight and look up your house on Zillow. And that's not like a mistake. It's just because every town's assessing department has to follow strict Department of Revenue rules and guidelines for how they calculate assessed values, so it intentionally does not mirror current market values. So I would suggest look up your value. It's on your tax bill. It's on your property record card. So for an average valued home, $517,000, the first year you'll see if this passes in 2026, it would be a nominal cost. Right? The annual cost, $3.65. So that's obviously nothing. Second year, it goes up a little bit more to $93 in that year. The reason why it's so small in the beginning is in the very beginning, that first year, it's just the architects and engineers doing design work. So we haven't gone out to bid. We haven't hired a contractor. There's no construction yet. So we're just paying for a smaller portion of the project. The second year is when it starts to ramp up, and then 2028 to 2057, that's when it's fully designed, construction documents done, we go out to bid, we hire the contractor, we're paying the contractor's bills, that's when the larger cost comes in. So you can see on average, for an average valued home, $223 per year, that's an annual number, comes out to like around 61 cents a day, something like that. And that's for the life of the debt. And we'll explain this more in a future slide, but we would fund this. What we're asking at the ballot and town meeting is to raise taxes to generate funding to issue bonds. So we would go out, issue bonds, the bonds would pay for this project, and then the length of these bonds would most likely be 30 years. So this tax increase of $223 for that average valued home would last for the remaining 28 years of the project. We also broke it out, monthly, if that's helpful for people. We also have on our town website, when you go to the fire department page, you'll see a special page on a link on the left-hand side for this project. We actually have a calculator built in, so you can put in your exact value of your home to get the numbers based on your value. Generally, if your home is valued at more than $517,000, your cost will be higher. If it's valued less, it'll be proportionally less. I know this chart has a lot going on, but we put this together because we had a lot of questions and thoughts from residents wanting to understand how does this fit in with the other debt the town has, and people understand other older projects like the high school or middle school. Those 30-year bonds, must be finishing and completing. So, how does this project fit within that? So, I'll try to explain this sort of as simply as I can. The bottom section in that kind of peach color, you'll see and I don't know if you can read it that far away, but it's labeled previously authorized and issued debt. So that's all the debt for things that voters approved and we issued and we've actually been spending. So for example, the high school, middle school, the Phelps School, that's debt that we've issued. I should have started by saying on the left hand, the vertical axis on this, the y-axis, this is our debt service. So when you see 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, those aren't tax bills. Those are dollars in thousands. So that's 6 million, 7 million, 8 million, et cetera. That's the amount of money that the town pays in total to pay our existing debt or to pay the debt that's proposed, whichever thing we're looking at. So that's the amount of debt. So currently, the very left-hand side, 2025, you'll see we're a little over $5 million in debt. So this bottom series, this sort of peach color is what we've already issued. And you can see a big drop in the debt between 2034 and 2035. And that's the way that debt was structured, and after 30 years, it falls off the books. And I should have stated this earlier too, again, when the debt is paid off, the tax increase disappears from your tax bill. The next series on top of that in green is the South Shore Tech Regional Vocational Technical High School that voters just overwhelmingly approved throughout the whole district. And in Rockland, we approved a debt exclusion to pay for our share of that project. Now there's some assumptions and potential variability in that project because our share of that debt, just like every other community's share of the debt with South Shore Tech, is going to change every 3 or 4 years depending on our share of enrollment. So the greater your share of enrollment, the bigger the share of that debt you pay. The less enrollment you have as a community, the less debt you pay. So there's different assumptions there because over time it's projected our share of enrollment's going to go down because towns like Marshfield are coming online. They're going to add students. There's only so many seats to go around, so our share will decline. So what this shows is in green, that's assuming that we are 16.85% of their total enrollment, meaning we'll pay 16.85% of the debt for the South Shore Tech project. That's a number we got from South Shore Tech. That's their projection in the future, what it'll decline to. But that's not a guarantee, and that's not where we're at now. We're currently at 21% of enrollment. So today we'd be responsible for 21% of the debt. That's the next row above, that kind of purple color. That's the additional amount that gets us up to 21%. So when you're looking at South Shore Tech, it's really kind of the combination of that green and purple, and it's going to fluctuate kind of somewhere between there over time. The upper left-hand corner in red, we're going to talk about this more at the end of the presentation, but we're also proposing a separate question to fund a new ladder truck. That's a 1-year only, one-time cost. So you'll see it says a $2 million ladder truck. So that's going to raise, that's a separate tax increase question. It's going to raise $2 million. It'll increase your taxes for 1 year, and then it'll immediately drop the next year. And what you'll see to the right of that in sort of orange is the fire station project, what we're talking about tonight. So we did this intentionally to have the ladder truck cost hit the tax bills first and then disappear before the significant fire station debt occurs. So you'll see if everything passes, if the ladder truck passes and the fire station project passes, you'll see our debt service will go from, $5.25 million, let's say, currently in 2025, up to a peak in 2029 of, maybe $8.25 million, something like that. But then because the underlying debt is declining, you see the black dashed lines we put in there. The black dashed lines start with where we're at currently today. And if you draw that line straight across to the right, and then you go down, you'll see 2035. We're at, if everything passes, even with all these tax increases because of the other debt falling off, we'll be at the same point we're at now as far as your tax bills go, even if everything passes. So that's a That's a significant point that we wanted to make, and I hope that's clear. If not, whoops, looks like I broke some. As soon as I said, I hope that's clear, it all went away. Did that explanation of that chart make sense to folks? I know it can be a little bit confusing, but generally, okay, great. Getting close. All right, excellent. Thank you, Chief. So the next thing we wanted to show is just the cost of these of the projects. You know, what's happening with inflation. So if you were really paying attention closely in a previous slide, we talked about the proposal that failed, and it was showing nearly $36 million. But if you remember 2 years ago at town meeting, that wasn't the number we asked voters to vote. It was $33 million. So just from 2 years ago to today, not even today, to 2 years ago, before the president announced all the tariffs and things went crazy with, you know, with the cost of materials, lumber, steel, all that stuff, it's gone up 8.4%. The point of this is the longer we wait, the more expensive everything's getting. And it's actually going to be worse than this now again because of the cost of lumber, steel, copper, all the other materials going in. So the point is, we know what we're asking is a lot of money, but the longer we wait, the more it's going to cost. Costs are not going to go down. It doesn't get cheaper. So the two places that we need support to pass this project is at the ballot this Saturday at the annual town election and a town meeting on Monday, May 5th. For a project to go forward, it has to pass both at the ballot, a simple majority, and a town meeting by a 2/3 majority. If it fails at the ballot, it will still be voted at town meeting. This question came up last time. When it failed at the ballot, people thought, okay, there's no reason to go to town meeting. It's not going to be voted on. It's dead. That's not true. If it fails at the ballot, please still come to town meeting and vote, whichever way you want to vote on this. If it fails at the ballot and it fails at town meeting, the project's dead. That's not going to move forward. But if it fails at the ballot and it passes at town meeting, the select board could, if they chose, call another special election sometime shortly after town meeting to give voters another opportunity. And part of the logic, if that were to happen, is when you're going to the ballot this Saturday, I mean, I shouldn't say you because you're here hearing this presentation. Everybody that's not here tonight is going to go to the ballot without the benefit of seeing a presentation, having questions answered, et cetera. So if it fails at the ballot, but it passes town meeting, there, you know, people will have had an opportunity to have a presentation, get their questions answered, so that might, you know, make them more informed if there's going to be a second opportunity to vote at the ballot. I know this might seem obvious, a yes approves the project, a no doesn't, but we put that in because I've actually gotten a few calls recently from people when they're taking the time to look at the sample ballot that's being presented, and one of the questions uses the word exempt, and exempt means we're able to raise taxes beyond Proposition 2.5. It's exempt from Proposition 2.5, but that was confusing to some people thinking, oh, does exempt mean a yes means we're not doing it? You know, what does it mean? So a yes means we do the project, a no means we don't. And do you want to just go right into the other one? Or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, no, that's what I was, so I added on to the end of this with the Rockland Fire ladder truck. And I know it's not an opportune time to be requesting a $2 million ladder truck. However, for the reasons that we're going to explain, is now is the time that we need to do this. Our ladder truck was purchased in 1999. It was $478,000 at the time it was purchased. In 2016, we refurbished the ladder. We repainted it, changed out some of the lighting on it, fixed some of the corrosion that we were finding on it. Being that we live in New England and we salt the roads and put chemicals on the roads, the frame rails, which the truck sits on the chassis, is starting to rot even further than it was in 2016. We were able to slow some of that rot down, but that rot is continuing in, not making for the safest vehicle. My goal was in 4 or 5 years to come to the voters and ask for a new ladder truck. That was my goal 5, 10 years ago. Now, in order to purchase a truck, it's 48 to 50 month build time for a truck. It's 2.5 years for a regular fire engine, 4 to 5 years, or 4 to 4.5 years for a ladder truck. An ambulance, 2.5 year wait time. I mean, these were vehicles that used to take 6 months, 9 months to build. The companies that we're dealing with, they still claim that they're backed up from COVID, from being shut down. I don't know if I fully believe that, but we have to take their word on that. So again, a ladder truck, $2 million, just mind-blowing. Last night or a couple nights ago, the town of Carver just approved $2.4 million for a new tower truck, which is a very similar truck, but it's got a fancy tower on the back for the firefighters, and it has a fire pump. This truck that we would be proposing wouldn't have any of that. For the purposes of our operations, we wouldn't need a truck that big or with those that equipment on it. So the cost, it's just mind-blowing now. But this $2 million, we're requesting a one-time capital outlay expenditure exclusion. And as Mr. Lapp explained that to us, that's a one-time increase in taxes to raise the money that we need, 1 year only, and then it falls off. It's not a debt exclusion that goes on for multiple years. Based upon the $2 million and the average $517,000 household, that would be an increase of about $300 per average for the average household for 1 year only. And I have to keep stressing that it would be 1 year only. And we did separate the voting, so we will have 2 questions on the ballot for the fire department, one for the ladder truck, one for the fire station, and then at town meeting, 2 separate articles, one for the ladder truck, one for town meeting. Doug?
Thanks, Chief. And I wanted to mention a couple things about this. In case you're wondering, well, why are we asking 2 questions? Why didn't we just bundle it as, one big question? And the main reason is some voters might want to support one thing and not the other. Maybe you support the ladder truck but not the station, or vice versa. So we want to give people a choice. And the other issue is if it was bundled together and it failed, we still need the ladder truck. So we're trying to find a way to give people the options to have their voice, but to also make sure we can get what we need done. And the third thing is this, this truck, costs $2 million. That's something on its own that doesn't make sense to bond and borrow for 30 years, pay all the issuance costs, pay interest and all that, where we can do, that one-time tax increase, will fully cover the cost of this, but won't waste any money on interest and borrowing issuance costs. And again, the timing works because there's not much fire station project cost in that first year. So hopefully that explains kind of why it's 2 separate questions.
One of the things I failed to mention earlier is, so this truck just went for service for the front end to be serviced over in Brockton. One of the parts that's needed for the front end of this truck, while the truck is safe to drive now and we can still operate it, but they couldn't fix the truck of the repairs we needed to make. The part from the manufacturer is no longer being made. It's almost a 30-year-old part. So they have to remanufacture it, which is going to take 12 weeks. So probably in about another 2 months, we'll be able to get the front end properly repaired on this vehicle. I had another point, and I completely forgot what it was, but I'll remember it. Anybody have any questions on either of the projects that we're looking at? Yes, sir.
If the new fire station doesn't get approved, does that mean that the old one's getting rehabbed, or the whole thing's off the plate, or what?
Yeah, no, great question. So the question, and I'm going to repeat your question so that the people while they're videotaping this can hear it. The question is if the new fire station doesn't pass, what's going to happen to the old one? Is it getting refurbed or not? Currently, at this time, we're voting for funding only for the new station, which means if it fails, it's status quo, we're living as we are now. We would have to come back to voters at another, either next year or the year after, and ask for funding for either, a new fire station or to refurb the current fire station. So no, we wouldn't be able to raise money.
Be automatic.
No, sir.
So on the rehab of the old station was 19 million and whatever. Did that include the 1.7 million for the relocation?
It did, yes. So the question is for the rehab of the fire station or the addition to the fire station, did that include the relocation of the firefighters? And it did. It falls under it falls within the soft costs, this $2.87 million. And this is for the addition to, if we were to take the properties out back, put an addition on the back of the station, and put an addition on the Pacific Street side of the station. And then under the soft costs, if we did just a renovation only, soft costs are at 2.1 million, but 1.17 of that would be relocation for each of those options. Bill?
If the fire station fails and the ladder truck passes, where are you parking the ladder truck?
That's a good question. So the question is if the fire station fails, yet the ladder truck passes, where are we going to put a new ladder truck? So a new ladder truck would have to be designed to go into the existing station on Union Street. So it'd be put on a special chassis, a lower chassis, to meet the height requirements or needs of our current station.
And does that raise the price of it?
There could potentially be increased costs due to that custom work, yes.
Sorry, Chief, a couple questions.
Yeah, Mr. Minnie, go ahead.
Does the relocation change any of the response time calculus from a property insurer? Does expansion, 199 units going up behind Home Depot or anything on the base, change the response time calculus? So that's,
It's a good question. I'll answer them one at a time. So the question is the relocation of the station, does it change our response time? And it does not. So we'd only be moving about half a mile down the road from Union Street to the corner of Church and Howard Street. That does not drastically affect our response time. And that was one of the big things we looked into. Where could we put a fire station in town to meet those needs? And that was, we studied that on many occasions and very well. We didn't want to give any end of town the short straw. We kept it within the geographic center of the town.
expansion, that's been all considered too,
Cor-
on the base. I don't even know what it's called anymore. Or-
Correct. So we looked at Union Point. We've looked at the proposed properties on the northeast end of town down by Home Depot. Eventually, well after my time as fire chief, we're probably going to have to consider a substation down that end of town. It does take us 8.5, 9 minutes to get to that end of town, which is outside of the recommended, 4 minutes by NFPA.
And then last question, sorry. This all gets approved, what happens to the old station? Is there demolition costs? Is it repurposed? Is it turned into a cool bar and restaurant? What's the idea?
So the question is, what happens to the current station if the new station passes? And my hope will be the last thing you said is what happens. So what we're voting on this April election, this May town meeting, is only to fund a new station. We're not voting on anything about what would happen to the old station. But if this passes, my recommendation to the select board would be at the next annual town meeting, we go before voters and ask for permission, authorization to sell the current station. And to sell that, we would do a public procurement process, a request for proposals. And again, my hope would be something that would be consistent with our local zoning, that could have a commercial use on the ground floor, like you said, a cool bar or restaurant, and housing residential up above, or something like that. And the best part of all that is, it would also put the property back on the tax rolls. And then the second best part of that is whatever money we get from that sale of that building, that can legally be put into what's called a sinking fund, and then that amount of money will directly offset the cost of this project. So if we got $1 million, this $26 million project turns into a $25 million project. And so that'll be up to voters to give that approval. Sure, Lori.
Yeah, I know there's no grants available for fire station. I mean, I've studied this, I've looked into it, it's true, there's nothing. But say like 10 years from now, there is a grant available, or some, very rich person dies and says, hey, I'm gonna throw $20 million to Rockland for their fire station. What would happen at that point? How would that?
Sure. So I'll just start off with the grants. We continue to look for grants and to look for other funding sources for the fire station. And I know you've been one of our largest supporters, so thank you on that with some great ideas on how to raise funds. We look to FEMA for a lot of our grants, and there's just uncertainty now of what's going to happen with that. That was the one thing I did forget for the ladder truck. We have applied for a FEMA grant for the ladder truck, which would pay up to $1 million. So we are working on a grant for the ladder truck as well, which would help in taxes wouldn't be as high if we could do that. I'm constantly, when I see Senator Keenan, Representative DeCoste, I'm always asking them, have we got any progress on a public safety building authority? Very similar to what the public schools have, where the state has a fund that a certain percentage is paid through state funds that are raised. They're working, they always say they're working on it, they just don't have a funding source for it yet. So, yep. And if some lucky donor, or if somebody hits, mega millions, then, I would think very similar to is if we sold the current fire station, that sinking fund, it would be a very similar offset of costs. Am I pretty close to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we certainly shouldn't wait and just hope we'll get a grant or a large donation someday, because every year the costs keep going up and up and up. I think the chief's right. I think if we get some miraculous, donation, that could certainly offset the debt, and, we could lower taxes accordingly. I think the other thing is like the chief was saying, and we've lobbied hard for this, for a public safety building program, just like they have for schools and just like they have for libraries in the state. They should have one for public safety projects. But even with schools, they don't cover 100% of the cost. We did very well with the Phelps School. The state covered, about half. So even if we were to wait for 20 years and we got a great state grant to cover half, with the cost increases, it probably wouldn't save us anything. So just another point to think about.
Yes, sir.
The sinking fund that he's talking about, is that a guaranteed spot that money would go to, or could they decide to shuffle it off into some other area of the town?
So my understanding is the sinking fund is allowed by state law, but I don't think it's required. So that money could also, instead, the select board could choose to, that revenue could be used for other purposes. But again, my recommendation would be like for like, reduce the tax burden, have it offset the cost of the project. But it's not, I don't believe it's automatically required to be, it's just an option. There's really nothing to vote on that. It's a provision in state law that allows towns to do that. Say that again, sir?
You're just hoping that the people on the board or whatever do the right thing.
Yeah. I mean, if I put it this way, I hope we have this problem to deal with. I hope we get there. And if we do, when we get to the point where we go to town meeting to get authorization to sell the building, that's something I could talk to our attorney, town council about, to see if, something like that could be added to the warrant article. I just don't know if that kind of thing is actually binding or not. But I can't speak for a future board, but I think all board members are always sensitive to the tax impacts on residents. And so I think if there's a way to offset the tax burden, they would do that, would be my guess. Any other questions?
No, well, I thank you all for being here tonight. You know, I just want to leave on one message, is we have members of the department here tonight. We're doing this project for them. You know, these men up there are the future of the department. This building, if I'm in an office in the new fire station for 2 or 3 years, all I'm doing is just stacking up paper for 2 or 3 years for the next poor chief to clean out. They have whole careers. They have 20, 25 years for a new station, for a healthier station. So let's do it for them. So thank you.